Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have board-certified divorce specialist Jean Leposki of the Family Division of Underwood Perkins, who is calling in all the way from Dallas, Texas. Now, Jean has a wealth of experience in the area of divorce, specializes in family law, and will be talking to you today about how the moneyed spouse, as in the main earner, should prepare for divorce. Now, that sounds really interesting, and I can't wait to hear what Jean has to share with us today. So without further ado, let's bring him onto the show. Welcome, Jean.
Good morning, Stuart. How are you?
I am great, on top of the world, and I hope you're feeling the same way too over there in Dallas. Everything okay on your side?
Yes, it is. Very nice and sunny today.
Excellent. Well, I'm calling you, or you're calling in to the show, and I'm in the Cayman Islands now, so we both have a little bit of sun on us on our side. Okay, so great. Let's make best use of our time then, Jean. Jump straight in. First thing I want to ask you is, now, I already mentioned that you specialize in the area of family law, but just for the person who's listening to you right now, what are all your key practice areas when it comes to the topic of divorce?
Well, family law deals with divorce, custody, prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, when people need orders modified or changed because their circumstances change, things of that nature all encompass family law.
Okay, great. So with that said then, Jean, can you briefly describe in your own words the kinds of people that you serve and the situations that they find themselves in when they come to you for your help?
Sure. Stuart, my clients range from men and women who have very simple divorces, and by simple I mean no children, no property, to professionals, businesswomen, executives, and athletes who have complex custody and property issues. These people normally have stock ownership in businesses. They have their own family businesses. They have property maybe throughout the world or the country or throughout the state. Things of that. A lot of times they come from families who have histories of handing down property. For example, in Texas, you have the oil men and women. You have your cattle ranchers, and the property goes from hand to hand throughout their history. And then they become married, and for some reason the marriage does not last, and that property has to be characterized and things of that nature. A lot of times, the other people who come in to see me are the non-moneyed spouses as well, and they really don't have any idea what their spouse has or they have, where it is, how much, and because they haven't partaken in that, they haven't participated in their finances as much as they could, maybe with kids or schooling or whatnot.
So just to be clear, and I know it sounds obvious, but could you just break it down into layman's terms? What is a moneyed spouse and what is a non-moneyed spouse?
Good question. The moneyed spouse is normally when the high wage earner or the main breadwinner in a marriage, normally one person maybe make more than the other spouse, or person is a homemaker, stay at home, and that's a full-time job, but doesn't necessarily get paid for it. So the person who's going to work or running the business, the executive.
With that person in mind then, Jean, what's the most common misconception surrounding how that moneyed spouse should prepare for divorce?
Well, there's a few misconceptions. The first one is always that since the moneyed spouse earns a lot, has a lot of property normally, that it's going to be very expensive to go through a divorce, and it's going to take a long time to finalize. They also, if that moneyed spouse has property from a previous marriage, there's a misconception that their spouse is going to understand that that asset is their separate property and will agree to give it to you. And there's also a misconception regarding that it depends on how the property is held, and how the property is held determines the character of that asset. And that normally is just not the case.
It goes without saying that everything you're sharing with us today, Gene, is not legal advice. But based on what you just shared with us, and unless you have permission to share names, dates, and places, please keep client confidentiality in mind. But could you share with us a case study or a short story, if you will, of how you've helped someone who came to you with those misconceptions, with those challenges that you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them?
Sure. For example, someone comes in and they have been an executive for a major company for a long time, and they have inherited some, say, since we're in Texas, some oil and some cattle and some real estate, and they still plan to continue to work for many years. This person, who's pretty much has been in my office before, the first thing I say is, one, you need to pick your battles. You don't fight over the things the judge will order or that the law requires you to do. For example, first you look at your monthly finances with your current spouse. Determine what amount of money you need to pay those everyday expenses while your divorce is pending. And when you do that, what you do is you take your earnings and your income, you go ahead and open up a new bank account. I'd have them set up a bank account and take the money from that bank account that you need to pay all your monthly expenses, just as if you remain married, and you send it over to that bank account, your old joint account with your spouse. That way, all of your bills, all the expenses are being paid. There's some support for that spouse while the case is pending. Now that, I tell them, and I have told them, that will keep me out of the courtroom arguing about temporary issues like temporary child support, spouse support, and paying the mortgage, so the other side isn't very anxious, thinking that they're not going to be able to live from day to day while this case goes on. So that cuts down the time right then. Second is that I say be proactive. Come on, client, collect all your documents. Go out, get all the documents that represent your community property, your tax, your earnings, anything related to your children, cards, psychological reports, what have you, health reports, school reports, the property, your stocks, your earnings, all your income, but also your pension plans, your stock plans. Then I say, go out and get your separate property, the deeds to the property that were gifted to you. When your dad passed away, bring me the wills, bring me the asset statements, bring me all the schedules that show that this property was yours through the death of your father, and some of it he gave you before he passed away and before you got married. Once we have all of that documentation, we send it to the other side. Now, once we have all the information to start being able to determine what that estate is, then we can work on settling, negotiating, trying to divide that property up. What I have done, this one situation, the businessman, he was a businessman. He really knew the extent of all his property and all his bank accounts and things, but he just didn't have enough time to address the case. He didn't have time to go gather documents and things like that. So we just simply went out and got an expert. Sometimes you need experts to help you along. And so we hired a forensic accountant, CPA, to go and get these documents, to go and examine these documents, draft spreadsheets, and see what kind of evidence we still need. By being proactive in gathering and analyzing this data and these documents, such a time, a lot of money, a lot of frustration. What I didn't mention is I also told his client, sure, you set up a new bank account so that you can have your earnings coming into that bank account, and then you each month transferred money so the bills get paid. You still have to be transparent with the new bank account. You have to produce those monthly statements to the other side. Nowadays you can have electronic viewing, so you can just give electronic access, so the other side can go online and view what's going on day to day in that bank account. They may not have the authority to pull out money, which you don't want them to do, but they can see that you're not doing anything unusual.
So when it comes to how the moneyed spouse should prepare for divorce, can you share with us some of the most common unknown pitfalls, let's say, that they might not be aware of, but should be aware of?
I would say that the most common pitfalls are just not understanding what the law is. For example, Texas is a community property state, which means everything that you acquire from the date of marriage until the date the divorce is actually finalized is community property. Community property then is divided in a just and right manner. Okay, a lot of people want to use the word fair. We fairly divide our assets. Well, fair in divorce law is like a four-letter word, in my opinion, because you can't think of it in fair. So the pitfall, one of them that I see is people start holding on personally to their property. Well, Jim knows that I always liked that lake house, and I always wanted that lake house, so I'm going to get that lake house no matter what. And that drives the litigation. Well, that may be the biggest asset that they have, and there's no way one person can just acquire or be awarded that asset if there's not enough to equalize the division. So things like that in Texas, just and right division is presumed to be 50-50. And then the scale could go, back and forth a little bit depending on how much time it takes somebody to earn back the money, or somebody has disability and intricate things. But the other pitfall is not proving up their separate property. They get obstinate in having the opinion that this was my great-grandfather's ranch. I don't have to give those documents to show the deeds on that ranch. I don't have to show the testamentary papers to show that it was given to me through inheritance. And then the court has no authority to rule that it's their separate property, and it ends up getting divided into the divorce, and that person will have to go on to the appellate courts and try to fight it. And then it's probably too late. So those are the main pitfalls. Sometimes the other pitfalls are litigating for the principle of the matter, where a spouse feels that they are totally wrong by something that happens in a divorce, whether the other spouse didn't work hard enough, didn't contribute, maybe had an affair, did something that caused a breakup of marriage. So they want the judge to know their personal story. And by golly, that judge is going, once he hears that story, is going to give me everything that I asked for. Well, if you litigate for the principle, it's never going to happen. You're going to get some things, they're going to give the other side some things, and in the end of it, you're not going to be happy. So those are really the pitfalls, is litigating for the sake of litigating, not understanding the law, not doing your homework, and getting all the evidence that you really need, that's available, that you can get.
I suppose it's really important to keep the emotions out of the whole process, right? As difficult as it is, because one may feel one has been treated really unfairly, a partner cheated on you, whatever the case may be. But am I on the right lines there, thinking to keep the emotions out of it as much as possible and to see it as almost as a business transaction, for lack of a better term. Am I on the right lines there,
You
Gene?
hit it right on the nail, because that's exactly how I explain it. The property side of things, you have to treat as a business deal. A lot of times, if there's an unequal division, the moneyed spouse may be able to make up that money that they gave away in 2 to 3 years of working, with different options and investments and things like that. If you keep the emotions intact, then your case is going to go on, and it's going to cost a lot of money. So just understand that it's property, and you have to divide it. That's what the law says.
Gene, it's a Monday morning. You're waking up, the alarm goes off 6 o'clock or whatever the time may be. How do you feel when you're doing your work on a day-to-day basis? Is this something you're really passionate about?
Yes, I am. I like to help people. It can be emotionally draining especially when you're dealing with the custody side of things. That's the hardest part. I do custody all the time, but my love is dividing up the complex states, finding solutions, proving up separate property, and things like that. Then it's sort of like putting puzzles together, and it's a lot easier to come to work and be excited to do those things.
Excellent. So with that said then, Gene, could you just briefly tell us a little bit about yourself, and especially in terms of your background and your education and your experience as it all relates to the topic of divorce?
Sure. Divorce has so many facets to it. So I think your entire life adds to the experience when you start practicing family law. I've been married for 25 years now. I have 2 children. I have been practicing for 26 years. I was first licensed in 1991 in Pennsylvania, licensed in California, and licensed in Texas, and became board certified by the Legal Board of Specialization in Texas. All of those practices somehow, some way touched with family law. I had my own business for years in California, and I was helping form create businesses. I was in litigation. I was doing divorces, and by doing all those 3 different types of law, it made me a better divorce attorney. I started off in a JAG Corps in '91, and I prosecuted family violence cases and things of that nature. And I saw the interaction of the parents with the children and the spouses. And then I took that to the civilian sector while I was still in the Navy and started lecturing on divorce law in California and what to expect, military benefits, things like that. When I came down to Texas, I signed up with a boutique divorce family law. That's all they ever did was family law. And that's when I got my certification, because of the sheer amount of cases that I processed through there.
Okay, so Gene, if you would just close your eyes for a moment and picture the kind of person who walks through your door and he or she wants to know how they, as the moneyed spouse, should prepare for divorce. Now, with that in mind then, Gene, what would be your absolute best tip? Not legal advice, but your best tip to that person listening right now.
I think the best tip is just to understand that you have to be open and honest and fully disclose all of your financial dealings, all of your assets and debts, period. Sounds like you're giving up the ship, but you're not, because the law requires it, and it's going to be the best way to go through your case and get the best results that you can get, have the respect of the courts, and it'll be less expensive, less drawn out, and less emotionally charged.
Gene, how can people connect with you?
Well, I am a senior lawyer at Underwood Perkins. It's in Dallas, Texas. My number is 972-661-5114. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. You could look at underwoodperkins.com, and you could see my bio. And we have a lot of good attorneys here that help. I no longer have to go out and get the other business attorneys and things to help in a complex case. They're all in my firm right now. I used to have just being a family boutique. Now we offer a wide range, so these folks can come in and help me, do a better product.
So the client gets a 360-degree support when they're walking through your door.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it, Stewart.
Thank you so much for your time today, Gene. It's been a blast, and I just feel like we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. So thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today.
Thank you, Stewart. I appreciate you having me on.
You're so welcome, Gene. And I'd also just like to say thank you to you, the listener, for joining us today on this very insightful and informative conversation with one of the top board-certified divorce specialists in Dallas, Texas. Today, make sure you check him out. His contact details will be on the website. So again, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.